My name is Emma, and I once believed I was living the perfect life. I married Daniel 5 years ago, and from the outside looking in, we seemed like the ideal couple. Our friends envy our relationship, and our families were proud of the life we had built together. But as I reflect on those days, I realize it was all an illusion. Our mornings started with a routine as smooth as clockwork. Daniel would wake up first, always the early bird, and prepare breakfast. The smell of coffee and freshly baked bread would fill the house, pulling me out of bed. Morning love. Daniel would greet me with a kiss on the forehead as I shuffled into the kitchen, still groggy. Morning, I'd mumble back, smiling sleepily. You spoil me, you know that. He'd chuckle, a sound that used to make my heart skip a beat. Just making sure you start your day right. We'd sit at the table, enjoying our breakfast while discussing our plans for the day. Daniel worked as a software engineer, and I was an interior designer. Our jobs kept us busy, but we always made time for each other. One particular morning stands out in my memory. It was a Friday, and we had planned a weekend getaway to a cozy cabin in the mountains. As we sat sipping our coffee, the anticipation of the trip added a sparkle to our usual routine. Can't wait to get out of the city, Daniel said, looking up from his laptop. We both need this break. I nodded, feeling the same excitement. It's going to be perfect. Just us, nature, and no work. We smiled at each other, a silent agreement that this weekend would be a chance to reconnect. But even then, there were small cracks in our perfect picture that I chose to ignore. That evening, as I packed for our trip, Daniel walked into the bedroom, his face serious. Emma, do you think we've been drifting apart? His question caught me off guard. What do you mean? He sat on the edge of the bed, looking down at his hands. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like we're just going through the motions. I sat beside him, taking his hand in mine. Daniel, we're just busy. Work's been crazy for both of us. This weekend will help, I promise. He nodded, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. I hope so. The weekend started wonderfully. The cabin was everything we'd hoped for: quiet, secluded, surrounded by nature. We spent the days hiking and the evenings curled up by the fire, talking and laughing. For a while, it felt like we had found our way back to each other. But on the last night, as we sat by the fire, Daniel brought up the topic again. Emma, I love you more than anything. But sometimes I feel like you're not really here, like your mind is somewhere else. I stared into the flames, unsure how to respond. He was right, but I couldn't admit it. Not yet. I'm here, Daniel. I promise. He sighed, pulling me close. I just want us to be okay, really okay. I leaned into him, wanting to believe that everything would be fine. We will be. As we drove back to the city the next day, the perfect illusion of our life together started to show more cracks. I wanted to hold on to the belief that we were still the couple everyone admired. But deep down, I knew that something was missing. And it was that missing piece that led me down a path I never imagined I'd take. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon when my life took a turn I never saw coming. I was at a work event, one of those networking lunches where everyone pretends to be more interested in each other than they really are. I was mingling, exchanging polite smiles and handshakes when I first saw him. Alex was different from anyone else in the room. He had a confident air about him that drew people in. His sharp suit and easy smile made him stand out. Our eyes met across the room, and I felt a strange pull. I quickly looked away, reminding myself that I was a married woman. But as fate would have it, we ended up at the same table during lunch. He introduced himself with a charming smile that made my heart race a little. Hi, I'm Alex, he said, extending his hand. And you are? Emma, I replied, shaking his hand. Nice to meet you. Throughout the lunch, Alex's presence was hard to ignore. He was witty, engaging, and had a way of making everyone around him feel special. When he spoke, his eyes seemed to lock onto mine, making me feel like I was the only person in the room. So, Emma, Alex said as we were finishing our desserts, what do you do? I'm an interior designer, I answered, trying to keep my tone casual. And you? I'm in marketing, he replied with a grin. I guess you could say I sell ideas. There was something about the way he looked at me, a mix of curiosity and something more intense. It made me uncomfortable, but also intrigued. I told myself it was harmless, just a bit of flattery from a charming stranger. As the event wrapped up, Alex found me again. Hey, Emma. It was great talking to you. Here's my card in case you ever want to grab a coffee and talk about design. I've been thinking of redecorating my place. I took the card, feeling a thrill that I couldn't explain. Sure, maybe. When I got home that evening, Daniel was already there, working on his laptop. I kissed him on the cheek and sat down beside him. How was your day? He asked without looking up. Same old, I lied. Just the usual meetings. I didn't mention Alex. There was no reason to, I told myself. It was just a brief encounter, nothing more. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself thinking about Alex more often than I should have. One afternoon, I decided to send him a quick email just to see how he was doing. His reply came almost immediately, suggesting we meet for coffee. I told myself it was just coffee, nothing to worry about. But when I saw him at the cafe, his smile made my heart skip a beat. We talked about work, life, and everything in between. He had a way of making me laugh, of making me feel special in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. At one point, he leaned in, his eyes locking onto mine. Emma, I have to say, you're really something. I haven't enjoyed a conversation this much in a long time. I felt a blush creeping up my cheeks. Thank you, Alex. I've enjoyed it too. We continued to meet, always under the pretense of discussing design or marketing. But each time, the connection between us grew stronger. It was becoming harder to ignore the chemistry, the spark that flared whenever we were together. One evening, as we were saying goodbye outside the cafe, Alex took my hand. Emma, I know you're married, but I can't help how I feel. There's something here between us. Don't you feel it too? I pulled my hand away, my mind racing. Alex, this isn't right. I'm married. I can't do this. He looked into my eyes, his expression serious. I know. But sometimes things happen that we don't expect. Just think about it. I walked away, my heart pounding. I knew I should cut ties with Alex and whatever was starting before it went too far. But a part of me, the part that felt alive and excited when I was with him, didn't want to let go. At home, Daniel was waiting with dinner ready. He smiled at me, his eyes warm and loving. Hey, how was your day? It was good, I replied, forcing a smile. Just the usual. But inside, I knew nothing was usual anymore. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure how to deal with it. The perfect illusion of my life was starting to crack, and I had no idea what lay beneath. The first time I crossed the line with Alex, it felt like stepping into a dream, one where every sensation was heightened, every emotion amplified. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening, when the world seemed cloaked in a misty veil, hiding our secrets from prying eyes. Daniel was out of town on a business trip, and the house felt eerily quiet without him. I tried to busy myself with work, but my mind kept drifting back to Alex. When his message popped up on my phone, my heart skipped a beat. Hey, Emma, feel like grabbing a drink. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I knew I should say no, but a part of me longed for the thrill of his company. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed back, sure. Where? We met at a cozy bar downtown, one of those dimly lit places where you could lose yourself in conversation and forget about the outside world. Alex was already there, waiting for me at a corner table. Hey, he greeted me with that familiar, charming smile. I'm glad you came. Hey, Alex, I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. I needed to get out of the house. We ordered drinks and talked about everything and nothing. The more we talked, the more the boundaries between us blurred. There was a magnetic pull that drew me closer to him, a force I couldn't resist. After a few drinks, Alex leaned in, his eyes locked on mine. Emma, you know there's something between us. I can't stop thinking about you. My heart raced, and I looked down at my drink, trying to steady my thoughts. Alex, I'm married. This isn't right. I know, he said softly, reaching across the table to take my hand. But sometimes the right thing isn't always what we think it is. I can't ignore how I feel about you. I looked up, meeting his gaze. There was a sincerity in his eyes that made my resolve waver. Alex, I. Before I could finish, he leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle at first, a tentative exploration, but it quickly deepened into something more urgent. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. It was just us, tangled in a web of desire and longing. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and flushed, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and guilt. We shouldn't be doing this, I whispered, though my body betrayed me by leaning closer to him. I know, Alex murmured, his lips brushing against my ear, but it feels too good to stop. We left the bar and headed to his apartment, the rain drumming a steady rhythm on the car roof as we drove. My mind was a whirl of conflicting emotions, but my body moved on autopilot, drawn to Alex like a moth to a flame. Inside his apartment, we didn't waste any time. Clothes were shed, and inhibitions fell away as we tumbled into his bed. The intimacy we shared was electric, a rush of sensations that left me breathless and craving more. Afterward, as we lay tangled in each other's arms, reality began to seep back in. I stared at the ceiling, feeling a mix of satisfaction and dread. What have we done, Alex? He stroked my hair, his touch soothing. We followed our hearts, Emma. That's all. But what about Daniel? I asked, my voice tinged with guilt. He trusts me. He doesn't deserve this. I know, Alex said softly, and you need to decide what you really want. But just know, I'm here for you, no matter what. I nodded, though my mind was far from clear. The perfect illusion of my marriage was now shattered, replaced by a tangled web of deceit and desire. I knew I had to make a choice, but for now, all I could do was hold on to the moment, suspended in the aftermath of our forbidden tryst. When I finally returned home, the house was as silent as when I left, but it felt different, like a stage set, waiting for the next act to unfold. I sank onto the couch, my thoughts racing. I had crossed a line, one that couldn't be uncrossed. The descent into temptation had begun, and I had no idea where it would lead me. Balancing a double life was both thrilling and exhausting. By day, I was the devoted wife, maintaining the appearance of normalcy in my marriage. By night, I became someone else entirely, someone who craved the forbidden allure of Alex's touch. Each time I saw him, I was pulled deeper into a web of deceit and desire. Daniel remained blissfully unaware. Our mornings still started with the routine we had perfected over the years. He'd wake up first, preparing breakfast while I lingered in bed a little longer. Every morning felt like playing a part in a play, the script familiar but now tinged with an undercurrent of guilt. Morning, love, Daniel said one morning, placing a cup of coffee in front of me. Morning, I replied, forcing a smile. Thanks for the coffee. He sat down across from me, looking concerned. You seem tired. Are you okay? I'm fine. I lied. Just a bit stressed with work. You know how it is. He nodded sympathetically. If you need to talk or need help with anything, I'm here. Thanks, Daniel, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. I appreciate it. After breakfast, I'd head to work, where I'd often find messages from Alex waiting for me. We texted throughout the day, our conversations filled with playful banter and innuendos. It was a dangerous game, but I couldn't stop myself. One afternoon, I received a text from Alex that made my heart race. Meet me at the hotel tonight. Room 214. Can't wait to see you. I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, I'll be there. The hours crawled by until I could finally leave the office. I made up an excuse to Daniel about working late, feeling a knot in my stomach as I lied to him yet again. At the hotel, Alex was waiting for me with that irresistible smile. Hey, gorgeous, he said, pulling me into his arms. Hey, I replied, feeling a rush of excitement as his lips met mine. We spent the evening wrapped up in each other, lost in a world where nothing else mattered. But as much as I tried to live in the moment, a part of me couldn't shake the guilt and fear of being discovered. Afterward, as we lay in the tangled sheets, Alex looked at me, his expression serious. Emma, we can't keep doing this forever. What are you going to do about Daniel? I sighed, the weight of his question pressing down on me. I don't know, Alex. I love him, but I'm so confused. I get it, he said softly. But you need to figure it out. This double life is going to tear you apart. He was right, of course. The constant lying, the sneaking around, it was taking its toll. I felt like I was being pulled in two different directions, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep it up. Back at home, the charade continued. Daniel and I went through our routines, but there was a growing distance between us. I could see the worry in his eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, Daniel looked at me, his expression serious. Emma, we need to talk. My heart skipped a beat. About what? He took a deep breath. About us. I feel like we're drifting apart and I don't know why. Is there something you're not telling me? I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. No, Daniel. It's just work and stress. I'm sorry if I've been distant. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. I love you, Emma. I just want us to be okay. I love you too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We'll be okay. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew that wasn't true. My double life was catching up with me, and I had no idea how to untangle the mess I had created. The perfect illusion of my marriage was crumbling, and I was trapped in the middle, unsure of which path to take. The unraveling of my carefully constructed life began on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. I was at work, immersed in a project, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Alex. We need to talk. Meet me tonight. His words sent a chill down my spine. I tried to concentrate on my work, but my mind kept drifting back to the message. By the time I left the office, my nerves were frayed. I drove to the cafe where we usually met, my heart pounding with anxiety. Alex was already there, sitting at a corner table with a serious expression on his face. As I approached, he stood up and pulled out a chair for me. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. What's going on? Emma, we can't keep doing this, he said, his voice tense. I can't keep living in this shadow, hiding and sneaking around. It's tearing me apart, and I know it's doing the same to you. I looked down at my hands, unable to meet his gaze. I know, Alex, but I don't know how to end it without destroying everything. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. You have to make a choice, Emma. You can't keep living this double life. It's not fair to Daniel, and it's not fair to us. Tears welled up in my eyes. I know you're right, but I'm scared, Alex. I'm scared of losing everything. He squeezed my hand gently. You won't lose everything. You'll lose the lies and the deceit. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find something real and honest in the end. That night, I drove home with a heavy heart. I knew what I had to do, but the thought of facing Daniel, of telling him the truth, filled me with dread. When I walked through the door, he was sitting on the couch, a worried look on his face. Emma, we need to talk, he said, echoing Alex's words from earlier. I took a deep breath and sat down beside him. I know, Daniel. We do. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. Is there something you're not telling me? I've noticed you've been distant, and I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I struggled to find the right words. Daniel, there's something I need to confess. I've been seeing someone else. His face went pale, and he sat back, shock and hurt etched into his features. What? How long has this been going on? Almost a year, I admitted, my voice shaking. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. And I'm so sorry, Daniel. He stood up, running a hand through his hair. I can't believe this. After everything we've been through, you betrayed me like this. I'm sorry, I repeated, sobbing now. I never wanted to hurt you. He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with pain. I need some time to think. I can't do this right now. He grabbed his coat and walked out the door, leaving me alone with my guilt and regret. I spent the night on the couch, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind, wondering how I had let things get so out of control. The next morning, I woke up to find Daniel still hadn't come home. My phone buzzed with a message from him. We need to talk tonight. I'll be home after work. The day dragged on, each hour feeling like an eternity. When I finally walked through the door that evening, Daniel was waiting for me. His expression was a mix of anger and sadness. Emma, I need to know why, he said, his voice breaking. Why did you do this? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I don't know, Daniel. I felt neglected, like we were drifting apart. And then Alex came along, and he made me feel alive again. But it was a mistake, a terrible mistake. He shook his head, tears in his eyes. I don't know if I can forgive you, Emma. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if we can ever get it back. I understand, I whispered. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry and I love you. I never stopped loving you. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. I need time. We both do. Maybe we can find a way to rebuild, but it won't be easy. I nodded, knowing that our path forward would be uncertain and filled with challenges. The perfect illusion of our life together had unraveled, and now we had to face the raw, painful truth of our broken marriage. The days following my confession were some of the hardest of my life. Daniel and I moved through the house like ghosts, barely speaking, each of us lost in our own pain. The tension was palpable, and I felt like I was walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might make things worse. One evening, a week after our conversation, Daniel and I sat at the dinner table in silence. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall seemed louder than ever. Finally, Daniel put down his fork and looked at me, his eyes tired and sad. Emma, we can't keep living like this, he said quietly. We need to figure out what we're going to do. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. I've been thinking about it too. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Do you think we can fix this? Do you want to try? I do, I said, my voice trembling. I want to try, Daniel. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, we can start with counseling. Maybe talking to someone will help us figure out how to move forward. Yes, I think that's a good idea. I agreed, feeling a small spark of hope. The next day, I called a marriage counselor and made an appointment for the following week. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. Daniel and I went to work, trying to act normal, but the strain was always there, just below the surface. One afternoon, as I was sitting at my desk, my phone buzzed with a message from Alex. I hadn't heard from him since our last meeting, and seeing his name on my screen made my heart race. Hey, Emma, how are you holding up? I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, It's been tough. We're trying counseling. His reply came quickly. That's good. I hope it helps. If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me. I hesitated before responding. Thanks, Alex. But I think it's best if we don't talk for a while. I need to focus on my marriage. Understood, he replied. Take care, Emma. I put my phone down, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I knew cutting ties with Alex was the right thing to do, but it still hurt. At home, Daniel and I went through our routines, but things were different now. We were trying to be more open with each other, to communicate better, but it was a slow and painful process. The trust we once had was shattered, and rebuilding it seemed like an impossible task. One evening, after another tense dinner, Daniel and I sat on the couch, watching a movie in silence. About halfway through, he paused the movie and turned to me. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course, I said, feeling my heart pound. Why did you do it? He asked, his voice breaking. Was it something I did or didn't do? Tears filled my eyes as I struggled to find the right words. It wasn't you, Daniel. It was me. I felt lost and I made a terrible mistake. But it had nothing to do with you. You didn't deserve any of this. He looked away, tears glistening in his eyes. I just don't understand. We had everything. How could you throw it all away? I don't know, I whispered. I was selfish and stupid. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do is try to make things right now. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I want to believe you, Emma. I want to believe we can get through this, but it's going to take time. I know, I said, reaching for his hand, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. We sat there in silence, holding hands, trying to find comfort in each other. The road ahead was uncertain, and the fallout from my actions would be felt for a long time. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were taking the first steps toward healing, and maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The first session of marriage counseling was nerve-wracking. Daniel and I sat in the waiting room, not saying much, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When the counselor called us in, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Welcome, Daniel and Emma, Dr. Harper said, her voice warm and calm. I'm glad you both decided to come. Let's start by talking about why you're here. Daniel looked at me, then back at Dr. Harper. We're here because our marriage is falling apart. Emma had an affair, and it's been hard to deal with. I took a deep breath, feeling tears well up in my eyes. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I know I've hurt you, Daniel, and I want to make things right. Dr. Harper nodded. It's good that you're both willing to work on this. Healing will take time, but it's possible if you're both committed. The sessions were tough. We had to confront painful truths, talk about our feelings, and learn to communicate in ways we hadn't before. There were days when I thought we'd never get through it, but slowly, things began to change. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, Daniel and I went for a walk in the park. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees. I never thought we'd be doing this, Daniel said, his voice soft. Walking and talking like this, trying to fix what was broken. Me neither, I admitted, but I'm glad we are. I missed this. I missed you. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Emma, I want to believe that we can get past this, but it's hard. Every time I look at you, I think about what happened. I understand, I said, my heart aching, and I don't expect you to forget. I just hope that, in time, you can forgive me. He looked into my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of hope. I'm trying, Emma. I really am. As the days turned into weeks, we continued our counseling sessions and slowly rebuilt our trust. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way, but every small step forward felt like a victory. One afternoon, as we were sitting on the couch, Daniel turned to me with a serious expression. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. I felt a pang of fear. What is it? I've been thinking a lot about our future, he said, taking my hand. I want us to start fresh, to let go of the past and build something new together. Tears filled my eyes as I squeezed his hand. I want that too, Daniel. More than anything. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Then let's do it. Let's find a way to be happy again. We started making small changes in our daily lives. We planned date nights, went on weekend trips, and spent more time talking and really listening to each other. The walls that had built up between us began to crumble, and we started to feel like a team again. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel turned to me with a thoughtful look. I think we should go back to that cabin in the mountains. The one we went to before everything fell apart. It could be a chance to make new memories. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. We planned the trip, and as we drove up to the cabin, I felt a sense of hope and excitement. The weekend was perfect. We hiked, cooked together, and talked late into the night by the fire. It felt like we were truly starting over, leaving the past behind. As we sat by the fire on our last night, Daniel took my hand and looked into my eyes. Emma, I love you. I know it's been a rough road, but I'm glad we didn't give up. I love you too, Daniel, I said, my voice filled with emotion. Thank you for giving us another chance. He pulled me into his arms, and we sat there, holding each other, feeling the warmth of the fire and the promise of a new beginning. The road to redemption had been long and difficult, but we had made it through together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about our future.